The fabric of history is tied together by the thread of human dissatisfaction and the desire to change oppressive systems. This process typically either plays out through violence, revolution, or structural change, reform. Although this process has been prevalent throughout all known history, movements which were centered around the concept of human rights began to ramp up in the 18th through the 20th centuries, and they were greatly caused by the influence of philosophical ideas which were originating in the Enlightenment, a period of growing intellectual interest in the concepts of sovereignty, natural rights, and rationalism.
In the realm of religion, especially within the Christian Church, there has been a common theme of disdain for centralized power. This has sprouted from social changes such as individualism, which prioritize critical thinking and interpreting religious texts in a personal way. Religious power is often abused and used to manipulate the masses. Religious change also tends to emerge in historical periods of heavy change or turmoil, which leads societies to search for comfort and higher support.
Figures like Martin Luther with his 95 Theses are most historically famous for religious reforms such as these, but Luther was not the only leader who split away from existing spiritual structures of power.
In the 16th and 17th centuries, Europe and America saw exponential growth in religious schisms through the emergence of numerous utopian and Christian separatist societies such as the Oneida Community, Anabaptists, Mennonites, and the Amish. According to Robert V. Hine, society is a group of people who are attempting to establish a new social pattern based upon a vision of the ideal society and who have withdrawn themselves from the community at a large to embody that vision in experimental form. These communities were likely influenced not only by the emerging separatist Christian views in the Second Great Awakening, but also Enlightenment ideals advocating social equality spread by thinkers such as Jean-Jacques Rousseau.
The Harmony Society, first established in Iptingen, Germany in 1785, was a religious community created as a reaction to religious persecution in Europe. Its founder, George Rapp, created the community in an effort to separate from existing Christian traditions and create a reformed sect which strived to adhere closer to early Christian communities in preparation for Christ's second coming. I am a prophet and called to be one. George Rapp, 1771.
Why Rapp believed Christ's second coming was near is unknown. It can be inferred that he may have been reacting to influences from changes in European society or some sort of Christian postmillennialism. I saw that salvation is in Christ Jesus alone, and how necessary it was to be in a still place and to hearken to one's heart. And this is the reason that I remained away from church. George Rapp, Iptingen, April 17th, 1785.
The society held various, often Anabaptist-inspired beliefs in regard to their faith, including believers' baptism and pacifism. They disagreed with the existing Lutheran views on baptism, which was that babies should be baptized as soon as they were born over concerns for the safety of their souls.
A little after a decade after the founding of the society in Germany in 1785, George Rapp's followers, who acquired the name as Harmonists for their desire to live in harmony with God and each other, signed the Articles of Faith in 1798, outlining the beliefs, promises, and values which the society would work to uphold.
We believe in a Christian church, but a church on the basis and plan of the Holy Apostles and the Fathers of the First Church. Separatists like Rapp and his followers began to grow in numbers, and the predominantly Lutheran German government began to respond. Leaders began to fear that this growing and somewhat rebellious group would become a danger to the state, so they began to persecute them, which caused the group to dwindle in followers. When the Harmonites eventually made their travel overseas to America, the number of members was only in the 100.
In 1803, George Rapp traveled along with his wife, son Johannes, and followers to America. By 1804, they arrived in Butler County, Pennsylvania, and purchased 3,000 acres of land. The Harmony Society democratically elected George Rapp as their leader in 1805.
The establishment of this community was finalized with the signing of the Articles of Agreement, which occurred on February 15, 1805.
Between 450 and 500 members signed the articles, pledging to give their possessions and cooperation to the society. This established the beginnings of communal aspects of Harmonite society. The Harmonites also created sustainable and humane systems of labor, which included shorter hours and ample breaks, which contrasted with the existing conditions which many other cities utilized, such as the Lowell system.
In In 1812, George's son Johannes passed away unexpectedly at the age of 29. George had no other male heirs to take over the society, so he adopted Frederick Reinhardt, a community member, to serve as the future leader of the society. Frederick's last name was changed to Rapp.
Religious reform was demonstrated in the community further through the adoption of celibacy and tobacco refrainment in 1806. Pacifism was also showcased throughout the community's entire existence, even to the extent of the eventual purchase of an exemption from the War of 1812, which greatly angered their neighbors.
In 1814, the community decided they may have more success getting involved in Western markets than they were in Butler County, so they migrated to Indiana, likely due to the cheap land, growth of the community's economic success, and the government incentives to move on to newer American territory in the process of applying for statehood.
In the Indiana Territory, the Harmonites were able to buy 24,734 acres, and they became very prosperous. They restarted their manufacturing, including the production of wool, but by 1819, the Western markets were so insufficient that they began to halt production because of currency issues and very low demand. Also, Rapp claimed that the climate was very warm, especially for the Germans who were used to colder temperatures, and several died.
Rapp decided that the Indiana community was not worth the toll, and the Harmonites moved back to Pennsylvania in 1824, establishing their final community economy. The town of New Harmony back in Indiana was then bought by Robert Owen to be converted into his own, much less religious-inspired, utopian society, which was inspired by the emerging socialist movement of the era.
The community of economy also continued to produce wine in their spacious wine cellar and created a community store, as well as a large hall where they hosted religious feasts. They also had a natural museum which was created to facilitate the appreciation of art and education within the Harmonite community. Silk production was abundant, and George Rapp's granddaughter was especially known for her skills.
As the community and economy continued to prosper, it did not go unnoticed. Harmonites were accused of creating a monopoly within the wool industry in the Allegheny region, leading to some outsiders to go as far as to advocate for the dissolution of the community by the state of Pennsylvania.
As time progressed, the enforcements of doctrine within the community began to become more flexible. Although Rapp still preached the same beliefs that he had originally, the members were free to believe or deny parts of Rapp's sermons, including doctrines about Christ's return. As the society grew older, they found it hard to gain new members, and celibacy furthered the group's decline.
Their struggles emerged when another religious visionary, Count de Leon, emerged in 1831. Leon was a fellow German who wrote to Rapp and explained his similar dissatisfaction with religious leadership in his country. In 1829, he informed the society of his desire to possibly join forces with them in the States.
Although Leon was mostly accepted by the Harmonites upon arrival, he began to preach his oppositions to celibacy and desires for greater material comfort, which led the Rapps to oppose his presence and call for an official vote to determine who would lead the community going forward.
Leon continued preaching his doctrines, and after the vote, around one-third of the society decided to leave and join Leon in his new society near Monica, PA, causing a schism which weakened the Harmonites greatly. Although the intention was for Frederick Rapp to succeed George, Frederick ended up passing away at the age of 59. He was succeeded at first by Jacob Henry and then by Jonathan Les.
The community began to become more and more unstable due to Leon's schism and its quick and weak changes in leadership following the deaths of the Rapps, leading to the Harmonites to officially dissolve in 1905.
The community's land was then sold to the American Bridge Company and renamed the town Ambridge. It still stands today and includes a visitor center and museum where travelers can take part in tours, walk through the history, and learn about the lives of the Harmonites.
The Harmonite community inevitably dissolved at the turn of the 20th century. Their examples of dissatisfaction, which they turned into successful theological reform, serve as an important historical example. The Lutheran Church in Germany demonstrate influences of widespread and rapidly growing desires for religious freedom that America was able to provide to them through their migration, which was quite revolutionary at the time. Although the community may have been a small thread in the fabric of history, their legacy serves as a clear case of beneficial reform and aversion to existing status quos.